In this video, I'm going to give my in-depth analysis and review of the Jurassic World Rebirth that I watched recently. I am both an animal scientist and a massive Jurassic Park fan. I'm surrounded by animals and Jurassic Park merchandise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to qualify what I say, as an animal scientist now, and then I'll say as a Jurassic Park fan. Two separate things, and I'll mention what I mean in each moment. But spoilers ahead, I'm going to go right into this. So the movie begins with a lab on a mysterious new island from InGen back 20 years ago, working on mutations and making experimental new dinosaurs. Of course, they're going for the same narrative that dinosaurs are now boring, and they want new experiments, new mutated animals, bigger, scarier, more exciting animals. As a Jurassic Park fan, I know of the 5 deaths, all the different islands. This island seems to be a new one. This new island is called the Island of St. Hubert. It's meant to be located in the Caribbean near Barbados. And what they've done is retconned that as being the experimental laboratory playground for the Jurassic Park, and then later Masrani, basically making out like it's Isla Sorna, Site B in the original lore of Jurassic Park. But now they've retconned it into Rebirth is actually what that was. Even though that was the whole point of Site B, in my opinion, which is why the fan theories of why the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3 was so much more theropod-like in its stance and its stature is because it was made in a way that made it the way they wanted it to be. Because these animals are not paleo-accurate dinosaurs, they're made of different parts of different animals' code, frogs. They're basically mutated monsters. They're new organisms that match the profile and the imagery of what we imagine dinosaurs to look like for our experience in the modern times. So there was already elements of playing around genetically and making made up looking things on Site B. But now that's all gone. Site B is done. Now it's all about St. Hubert. So the movie opens up where we're in a lab. We're going through a lab looking at people wearing big hazard suits, handing off checkboards to each other, going about their day in the lab. And then it pans to one of the staff eating a Snickers bar and then throwing the Snickers bar wrapper on the ground. And that Snickers bar wrapper gets sucked into a vent, causes some shortage or power problem, which stops a door from closing. And somehow that released an organism known as the disfigured Rex, the D-Rex. And then there's panic, there's shooting, and all the D-Rex is loose. But all of this came from a Snickers bar getting sucked into a vent. So now, speaking as an animal scientist, when I've worked in labs, there's no food, there's no water, you have to leave the room if you want to go access those things. It's meant to be a sterile environment for a reason. It's a working laboratory, right? So the imagery of this movie is the laboratory was so sterile, it had to be so perfect that everyone's walking around in hazmat suits when just sat at their desks, but yet someone can walk around eating in that environment. That would be a big no-no. That would never be allowed to happen. So first of all, I kind of rolled my eyes at that in the cinema and I was like, why is he eating in a lab? Second of all, there is no sponge filter on the intake of a vent, so the fact that Snickers bar could even get sucked into it was ridiculous anyway. It would just get pressed and held against it if the intake and the suction was that powerful. But there should be some foam that stops dust or debris like a fucking Snickers bar getting sucked into it. Also, it's not clear as to why the D-Rex was released by that, because this looked like the door to the laboratory, and then past the laboratory was a double airlock system like you would get in zoos to the pen where the D-Rex is being held. But it looked to me, or it appeared to be, that the door to the laboratory was the one that got stuck and wouldn't shut. So I don't know why this one getting stuck has any implication upon the double door airlock system before the D-Rex. That wasn't really explained or explored. They just kind of made out like, oh my god, it's out. They even had a scene where the guy in the trailer, they get stuck in there with it around all the red mist. They have to use a key at the same time to open that final door in that double airlock system. And we even saw this choked up moment where that staff member has to decide that her colleague has to die for else she would release the D-Rex. And she makes that decision to stand there and watch him die. And she even says, I'm sorry, as she backs away slowly. So how the bloody hell was it out? That isn't explained. It isn't explored. It was just this quick-paced writing that didn't make sense to me. And then we move on to our protagonist for the whole storyline, Scarlett Johansson, who plays Zora Bennett, who's meant to be this mercenary that does these hard missions. She's got PTSD, she's got trauma from her last mission because she lost her friend. She's meant to be this real gritty character that even appears in someone's car because she's like this stealthy ninja, right? She's offered a lot of money by this shady figure that works for some corporation that wants to go collect DNA samples from the biggest dinosaurs on the island, that being the Mosasaurus, the Titanosaurs, the sauropods, and the Quetzalcoatlus. This is where it's introduced that the plot point that drags this whole plot forward and as to why they're going to this island is because they need to extract DNA from these animals because they have big hearts, and these big hearts are the key to curing heart disease. Absolute load of rubbish. Just really, really tacky writing. There could have been easier motivations to move that plot point forward. But anyway, they then go and visit a scientist in a museum that knows the dinosaurs and can identify the dinosaurs to go on the mission with them. This is meant to be the guy that plays the sort of like Alan Grant position in this movie. This is played by Jonathan Bailey, who plays the character Dr. Henry Loomis. Now, I quite like this character. This character felt more serious, more toned down, more adult. That's how I felt. Now they ask him to come along and they bait him by saying, have you ever seen a dinosaur in the wild? And then that is the thing that persuades him to go on the trip. And they basically have this whole storyline of going through these different characters and collecting them for the mission to the island. Mahershala Ali, who plays Duncan Kincaid, is one of the mercenary types that owns a boat, who they get to come along and take them to the island. Now, before going to the island, they have the slow build up, talking about what they're going to need, the character development, their motivations for going, why they're so compelled to do something so dangerous. And it did remind me of the early stages of The Lost World, where they were talking about some people are fearful to go, and they call it the 5 deaths. And there was this lore building and world building that was present in The Lost World that was starting to creep through at this point, I feel like. They explain that there's this huge quarantine zone around the islands. And the reason there's the quarantine zone is because all the animals that spread across the earth in Dominion now have all died apart from the ones in this equatorial band around the earth, which as an animal scientist is absolutely ridiculous. They spent a large part of Dominion explaining how these animals have survived for years and bred in the wild for years in conditions that weren't suited to them. We saw blue in the snow for like 3 years. We saw herds of Parasaurolophus out in the snow. We saw animals in these extreme climates that probably wouldn't suit them, surviving just fine for long periods of time. And now, years later, apparently they're all dying off, and it's only the ones in this equatorial band around the Earth that survive, and conveniently in these islands. And this island is meant to be one of the remnant populations where animals are still thriving in this movie. Which is nonsense, because if you set up the position that they are surviving in these harsh climates, animal populations would only get stronger and adapt to those environments, with new alleles and genetics getting stronger and selection for cold tolerance in these environments. They would only get better at living in these environments with time, not worse. I feel like with the whole Jurassic series, whether it's Jurassic World or Park, they seem to make a new movie and they're like, oh, I want to do this. And it's like, but that doesn't fit with the lore, you got to make it fit. And they're like, oh, screw that, delete that, doesn't count anymore. And I feel like they do that with every single film. They did that with the events of Jurassic Park 3 in Isla Sorna. They went, done, delete that, forget about it, don't worry about it. And Rebirth did the same thing. With Dominion, the whole thing was Dominion over the Earth. They spread all the way across the globe. And then the next film, like, yeah, they're all dead. It's only on this island, which is what makes it a special island where they have to go there to get these samples. Because the ones across the Earth, they're all gone. Don't worry about it. As a Jurassic Park fan, I hate it. I hate the lack of world building and consistency in the lore. The thing that sucks me into the world of the Jurassic series is the lore and the world building. And when you can't even commit to loving your lore and committing to your world building, how do you expect an audience to? How do you expect an audience to fall in love with your movies if you can't commit to the lore yourself? I'll get very upset about it. Yeah, so that's their motivation. So they have to go to this particular island because that's all the dinosaurs that are remnant left. So they commission this boat, they commandeer this boat, they head on out, and they now have bought the rights to the tracker that tracks the mosasaur. that's living, circling in the waters around this island. During their travel to the mosasaur, they get a distress beacon from this family that got attacked by Spinosaurids and the mosasaur on this yacht. And there was a whole scene of the mosasaur trashing this boat, and this boat turning upwards with the belly up, basically, and his family sitting on the boat, stranded, sending a distress signal. They introduce sort of the moral compass of the character Duncan when he makes the call to head on back to get to his distress signal. And they also set up the moral compasses of the shady villain character, which is the whole corporate suit guy. So cliche, but they set that up because he was like, no, screw them, we've got a mission. And then Duncan is the moral one that says, no, we're turning the ship around. They rescue this family and then they head on over to continue their mission, hunting the mosasaur. There is a scene with Zora, Scarlett Johansson's character, sat on the front of the boat trying to shoot this dart into the mosasaur as it is like going just along the surface next to the boat. Of course, a bit of science fiction with a bit of futuristic technology, but yet, nonetheless, that was their motivations. They do manage to extract that blood and get that sample from the mosasaur, but not before a load of Spinosaurids come and attack the boat and attack a lot of the characters on this boat. Now, the tacky English, hard bad boy, Jason Statham type character that was shooting at the dinosaurs gets grabbed by a Spinosaur and dragged off the boat into the water and eaten. Not before he holds onto a rail, looks a little girl in the eyes before he dies, traumatizing her forever. One of the daughters of the family on the yacht went to send a distress signal on the radio of the boat with a shady corporate character who is played by Rupert Friend. Pushes her away from the radio, she falls over the rail and falls overboard whilst he makes his decision to watch her die, right? Because he doesn't want her to send a distress signal to allow authorities to know they're in a restricted zone they smuggled themselves into. And he has a mission to get to, so he tried to kill her. Essentially. The mosasaur, it battles, body slams the boat a few times, runs them ashore, drags the boat across the rocks, and they end up crash landing on a beach. Another member of Duncan's crew, whilst walking up to a beach and trying to move a load of supplies, gets grabbed by a Spinosaur and taking off into the water yet again. Again, Spinosaurus, the famous return of Spinosaurus that was promised, actually looks quite different from the Spinosaur that we saw in Jurassic Park 3. They're more squat and short and are described as nearly fully aquatic. They have a weird snout that isn't really Spinosaurid at all. In a weird way, they've tried to conform to the paleo-accurate depictions of Spinosaurus by making it more aquatic, but then making it nothing like the snout of a Spinosaur that we associate with being paleo-accurate. The problem I have with the design of the Spinosaurs is that the Jurassic World series and everything thereafter, all their theropods designs are the same. It's so samey, whether it's their Spinosaurus, whether it's their Baryonyx, basically looks very, very similar. Or it's the Indominus, whether it's their Allosaurus. Every single one of those dinosaurs, I feel like, has a very similar face, has a very Jurassic World coded face. They're kind of like the same homogeneous blob with a little bit of accent here and there to differentiate them. I just feel like it's the same design, and it makes it feel like they're incapable of designing things to be unique and fresh. They all have the same sort of face, and I don't like it. There's a large group of the Spinosaurids that are circling in the water around the boat, and they quip and they're like, oh, it's helping the mosasaur hunt, which I think is so tacky. As an animal scientist, I roll my eyes at that. This large marine predator is having these small little Spinosaurids help it hunt. In reality, that animal would be having to go look for large prey like whales and things like that to even support its gargantuan size, which is way bigger than an actual mosasaur. But besides the point. But the notion that these Spinosaurids are in this pack helping this mosasaur hunt these teeny tiny people, when actually the Spinosaurids themselves are a much larger meal to the mosasaur than the tiny little humans. Like I say, something of that size would have to go hunt whales. How is a Spinosaur going to help a mosasaur hunt a whale in the first place? It doesn't make sense. It's a stupid thing. Speaking as a Jurassic Park fan now, I hate the fact of what they've done to Spinosaurus. If we've got to a position where it's like, this is our Spinosaurus, Jurassic Park 3, in-gen Spinosaur, this is the design in our Jurassic universe, you have to stick by it. In the same way they made Velociraptor, but then they made it like the size of like a Utah Raptor or this Deinonychus character, but then they still stuck with it all the way through with Velociraptor because, do you know what? It's our design, it's our character, we're going to stick with it. I feel like if you're going to do that and be like, doesn't matter because it's made of frogs and it's like this movie monster that's made for a theme park and it's not actually a dinosaur, which is even said by Henry Wu, then why not stick with the fan favourite Jurassic Park 3 depiction of a Spinosaurus? We absolutely love it. I don't know why you would do that and then make it some less impressive, less imposing creature. During this time, the family jumps ship. They wash up on the beach somewhere else from the mercenary party. The mercenary party decide to continue on their mission to go get the samples, and the family are trying to get to a human settlement or human buildings to try and find a radio or find a way to get help. This leads on to a scene where the boyfriend of the daughter in this family leaves them to go take a pee in the woods, to which we see something really interesting. We see a velociraptor, two velociraptors, one stalk up to him as he's facing away peeing, and you see this slight raise of the foot and this slow put down of the foot as they stalk towards their prey. Very, very animalistic behaviour, and as an animal scientist, I looked at that and I was like, oh, I like that. I like that a lot. We see this natural predator depiction of a velociraptor that hasn't been seen since the actual original Jurassic Park trilogy. I feel like in the Jurassic World series, they made the raptors superheroes. In the way that the Velociraptor and Rexy teamed up to fight the Indominus, it was like the good guys versus the bad guys. I find that really tacky. I like it when it's raw, and it's animalistic, and it's brutal. And then going into this wild world where there is a mystery and magic, and you seeing these herbivores, and it brings a tear to your eye because it's beautiful. And then there is carnage and fear because the predators are there, and you're an easy prey compared to like these huge herbivores they would normally have to hunt, and you're an easy meal and they're chasing you. That animalistic brutality is what I loved. That realism is what I loved from the original trilogy, and I got a glimpse of that in that moment. But just before this velociraptor decides to embark and launching itself towards the character peeing, a winged velociraptor hybrid called a Mutodon swoops down, kills the velociraptor, and just carries it away like it's nothing. Now, as the animal scientist again, I'm like, how was that even carrying that? Secondly, as a Jurassic Park fan, I'm there like, well, you've been leaking the redesign of the velociraptor this whole time in the marketing up to the movie, and you're telling me the only time a velociraptor is actually shown in this movie is for it to stalk for a period of 30 seconds before it gets railed and carried away and dies really easily. As a fan, I don't care about your wannabe dragon Mutodon. I care about the velociraptor acting like a velociraptor again. I want the Lost World, the tall grass, the menacing behaviour that made the velociraptor what it is to us fans. So the fact that you just kind of rail it to introduce the Mutodon, I really couldn't give a monkeys about your Mutodon crap. I'm sorry. But in the same way that Jurassic Park 3 used a fight between the Spinosaurus and a T-Rex, and the T-Rex getting killed pretty easily, as a means to introduce the Spinosaurus as the big threat and the big bad now, I think they tried to recreate that and having the Mutodon absolutely just rail this raptor and then just fly away with it like it was nothing. And I think it was meant to be this shocking moment where it was like, oh my god, what was that? But in reality, I was like, oh, here we go with this Mutodon crap. I assume it's a mixture between a pterodon and a velociraptor, where it's a mutated pterodon, the Mutodon. But in actuality, I would prefer to have shown pterodons having a real impact, an interaction with the humans in the same way of Jurassic Park 3, and then velociraptors interacting with the humans independently. I don't care for your Mutodon. But anyway, that moves us on to a scene where the mercenary party moves on to a field where the sauropods appear, the titanosaurs, and there's a really beautiful moment. The Jurassic Park music is playing, and it's this peaceful moment of awe looking at these sauropods. And we even get a moment of this courtship behaviour between two individual sauropods. There's gentleness to this giant. As an animal scientist, I really appreciated just having this animal-centric behaviour of this animal. Dr. Henry's character actually got to have a really nice moment where he walked up and touched the leg of the sauropod and had a little cry. And to be honest, I probably think I would do the same. So I saw myself in that character. I related to that character in that moment of having this intake of awe like, I'm here and this is a dinosaur. This entire scene with the titanosaurs in this moment was very much the scene where the stegosaurs appeared in the Lost World, and it was this slow moment of magic that struck with me in the same way the original trilogy did. So I really appreciated this scene. Then our party, that is the family, moved to a river where they see a boat shack, and one of the daughters swims across, walks onto this little pier or pontoon or whatever you call it, walks into the shed, found an inflatable raft. Whilst this happens, there is a Parasaurolophus carcass that has been half eating, there's flesh is exposed, and you can tell that something made a kill recently. Now a Dilophosaur appears from the grass to have been scavenging on this carcass, gives a threat display to the daughter character before a sudden noise in the background, a grumble appears, and it runs away into the foliage. This is where she turns around and this T-Rex feet come out of the grass and roll over, and then you see this T-Rex that is like full of food and is lazing around in the grass and is sleeping. And again, I really liked this depiction of the T-Rex in this manner, back to making it an animal doing animalistic behaviours, rather than it's our superhero character who's got to fight the bad guys. This depiction of it resting and lazing around, it's gorged itself on this big meal, it's sitting near its carcass. I really appreciated this behaviour and this realism they're giving the animal. She then inflates it and the thing pops up, and then she pushes it to the ground, and as the dinghy flops down, the T-Rex disappears. And they pile into this boat, and you see the T-Rex drinking, and this pterosaur flies overhead, and it stops and turns and just watches the pterosaur, and it goes back to drinking, just going about its day. And as a kid, when I used to watch like The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, these elements of just watching animals do their thing is what I loved most about the Jurassic universe. Dinosaurs back to life, getting to see dinosaurs do dinosaur things. There's a lot of squeaking and squealing from the family of the little girl screaming and whatnot. And the Tyrannosaur takes an interest and starts wandering over to this dinghy that's trying to paddle away and get away. And it starts swimming in the water. And this is a callback to a scene in the novel where there's a rapid river ride and there's a tyrannosaur that's swimming and following this guy on the boat, and it's this chase scene on the river rapids. It's a callback to that. Now, as a Jurassic Park fan, I loved the scene. I loved the moments of underwater trying to bite and it was missing and it was going after them. It called back to the book and I loved it. As an animal scientist, it makes no sense whatsoever. This animal is already full, it's gorged, it has a valued resource in that Parasaurolophus carcass. It is more motivated to stay near that carcass and protect that carcass than it is to chase after little humans going down a dinghy away from it. The only way you could explain this behaviour in a realistic sense would be some sort of play behaviour from the Tyrannosaur, this bright yellow novel object, and it's squeaking. The shrieking from the kids might excite it, which is why it's getting into this play behaviour. But we know that the movie's intent was it was hunting them and it was after them before to eat them because it tries to snap and take them. But there is a scene where the party gets away and the Tyrannosaur is thrashing the dinghy around and playing with the dinghy. So you could chalk it up to play behaviour. My headcanon as an animal scientist is that was play behaviour, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to me. But as a Jurassic Park fan, love this scene. Absolutely brilliant. So the mercenary group take a sample from the sauropod, collect it really easily, really peaceful moment, before they turn and pan to this ruins up in the mountains, and there was quets circling around it. So they make their way up there and they abseil down to this temple that's in the rock face, where the quets are nesting to collect the sample from the egg and not the actual adult animal itself. These ruins were never explained why they're there, why there's this ancient civilization-looking ruins carved into the side of a mountain hundreds of feet in the air. Doesn't really get explained. So as Zara and Dr. Hendry are extracting DNA from this egg, there is also another character that is on the mountain, still in his position, abseiling, with guys up top, and he distracts this quet by throwing hammers at it and stuff, whilst they can collect from the egg. This Quetz is then climbing up the side of the cliff face, whilst the guys on top are pulling him up. He gets to about the top, and then they find that the Quetz's huge head emerges over the crest of the edge of the cliff with the guy in his mouth and the rope hanging out of his mouth. They have a bit of an interaction up top, and they find this stairwell that they go down, and then the other characters either fall or abseil down, and now they're on to the rest of their journey. The design of the Quetz, again, I feel is very like Jurassic World coded. There's very like weird, like bulky, big head. I feel like everything's got this massive head in the Jurassic World universe, almost like chibi dinosaur vibe, and I'm not really about it. I was hoping for more of a realistic design of a Quetz. That's the thing that I really enjoyed about the Jurassic Park trilogies. I felt like their designs were uniquely realistic to each animal. They didn't have like, this is our style of dinosaur, and all our theropods kind of look the same. When Jurassic Park 3 did pterodons, I think they did pterodons perfectly. And this Quetz from Rebirth, I just felt like it didn't look like a Quetz. It was weird. It had a really big barbed arrow at the end of its beak. Like, it was a very like stylistic approach. I wasn't the biggest fan, but it was okay. Like, it was acceptable. I wasn't like, oh, it's disgusting. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But again, on this island, everything is mutated and it's all experimentation and like failed experiments. So it could just be this weird, ugly experiment one that went wrong. I don't know. This leads to the mercenary group and the family meeting up and joining parties at the human buildings. And they explained it was from geothermal power, and this petrol station was turning on every night and playing music like clockwork, like it's on some system. This backup power keeps coming on. And because this happened every night, and because this music was playing, it attracted all sorts of predators. The D-Rex rocks up, the Mutodons turn up. As a animal scientist, I'm like, why? Because if this is happening every night, the animals will be habituated. They would be totally used to it. It would be a part of their daily routine of how the island works. They wouldn't be attracted to it because they would have gone there X amount of times, realised nothing's there and nothing happens. And by this point in time, years later, it would be like, oh yep, that's going off again. It wouldn't have this big appeal of like attracting them to the site. So as an animal scientist, that behaviour didn't make sense to me. Then we have a scene in the actual convenience store section of the petrol station, or the gas station, if you will, where the Mutodon is basically recreating the scene from Jurassic Park in the kitchen, where they're hiding behind different parts of the stands, or the aisles, and the Mutodon's foot is shown with its claw there, basically doing a recreation of the scene, a throwback to the original scene from Jurassic Park. And my response as a Jurassic Park fan was like, you're not a raptor, don't like you, get out. Sacrilege! And of course the shady corporate guy turns out to be this really bad character. He found a gun earlier in the film on a pilot's hand hanging out of a crashed plane, and then he points a gun at people and takes the samples off them, hijacks his car, drives away. And there's this whole chase scene in the sewers, the underground tunnels underneath all this complex, where the Mutodons follow them down. And as they get out, the D-Rex appears, and then the shady corporate character crashes into the D-Rex, gets eaten by the D-Rex, and it's a whole scene of the D-Rex chasing them, and then Duncan's character takes a flare, because this animal is basically a T-Rex, right? Does the whole, like, wave it, vision based on movement thing, like from the original movie, and runs off into the woods to take it away from the main cast, who then get to this boat, get it going, start moving away, and they're tearful, they're upset because like Duncan's dead, only to find out another flare gets shot out into the sky, and they collect Duncan, and then they leave the island. That is essentially how the movie goes. Now, I feel like the D-Rex and the Mutodons at the end, the D-Rex is taking the role of the T-Rex, and the Mutodons are taking the role of the Velociraptors in this case. I feel like for the plot, the D-Rex and the Mutodons were like ineffective, and what was the point in them? They just kind of turned up at the end and were like, "Arr!" as they started a boat and drove away. I think I'm one of the few Jurassic Park fans that like absolutely loved Jurassic Park 3. I don't know why, but again, from my perspective, what I loved as a child was it was just animals, and there was this ecosystem, and they were travelling to this island, and they were a part of this ecosystem of observing it, and then running into trouble where predators took an interest in them. I liked that gritty, basic, animalistic routine, right? Which Lost World gave me, and then Jurassic Park 3 gave me again. So, as a child, I didn't really care much for the plot. I was like, they're in this ecosystem and the whole thing was going on. So I'm looking at Jurassic Park 3 with rose-tinted glasses in a weird way. But in the same way that Jurassic Park 3 ended where they heard helicopters and they ran out onto a beach and they got rescued, kind of abruptly ends in Rebirth 2 where they get in a boat and they just drive away. I don't really feel that these films just have an end. They just kind of like, whoa, tension, done, end, off we pop. Did you enjoy time at the cinema? That's how it felt. I don't feel like Rebirth offended me as a Jurassic Park fan. Dominion did. Dominion upset me greatly. I left the cinema angry. I hated what they did to the original cast, the original trio. I felt Alan Grant was such a serious character who I really liked as the sciencey character. And then in Dominion, they made him a laughing stock, and he would be like, oh, literally at one point I think his hands literally went like this, and he was running away like a dingbat, like a silly goof. And that's not innately who Alan Grant was as a character. He's very much a serious character. And that very seriousness in Jurassic Park 3 came through a lot. So when he comes back as this marvelication of it, this quippy, goofy, woo, everything's a joke type vibe, I just, sacrilege. In this case, Rebirth didn't really offend me. I wasn't I loved it. I loved certain scenes. There were certain scenes I was like, this has got the essence, the juice of what I loved about the original trilogy. But it doesn't really get there. It shows flickers of promise, is what it shows me. I wasn't offended by it. I was like, that'll do. The Last Kingdom and Dominion, honestly, I felt like it was tarnishing Jurassic Park's essence for me. The whole bullshit Luigi's Mansion crap in The Lost Kingdom, and then what I said about Alan Grant's character and stuff in Dominion, hated it. But Rebirth, I don't feel like it crapped on it that much. It was like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 for me. It was like, meh, it'll pass. I'll accept it. Honestly, I thought they could have done what they did with Jurassic World. Jurassic World was basically a copy and paste of the original Jurassic Park movie with some extra modern flair and storyline going on, right? I feel like they could have just done Jurassic Park 3 with Rebirth, basically redone it, but then giving it the attention and plot that I think Jurassic Park 3 was missing. Because Jurassic Park 3 had so much potential, but it was plagued with production issues and other issues going on, which is why it was so controversial to Jurassic Park fans. I feel like they could have taken Jurassic Park 3, done it again in the same way they did Jurassic Park for Jurassic World again, but then done it great. They could have brought back the Spinosaurus, made that the D-Rex, and basically just gone again and done Jurassic Park 3, but then giving it a chance to be done properly, or done better. Because I still love Jurassic Park 3. And I feel like a lot of our Jurassic Park fans would have lapped it up. You tell me, would you have lapped that up? Because I would have lapped that up. I feel like the D-Rex, it was meant to be this tortured soul, twisted thing that you're meant to feel sorry for, because it was creepy, but also sad. Wasn't creepy or sad. I just thought it was a crap design. I thought it was ineffectual. It didn't feel imposing. It wasn't scary. So this brings me to my ranking. Obviously, Jurassic Park is top. It will never be topped. Then it goes Lost World. And then I'd say second and then second and a half is Jurassic Park 3. I'd say Jurassic Park 3 is close with Lost World for me. Then I'd say it probably goes... I'd say again, Rebirth and Jurassic World are very close for me. Because I did like what Jurassic World did with... this is what my partner brought up as well, with the world building. It did a lot of explanation, a lot of world building, a lot of things that I accepted as world building. It was nice. I enjoyed it. It was basically Jurassic Park, but if it got to open, and that element I really enjoyed. So yeah, I'd say 4th is Jurassic World, 5th is Rebirth, and then Dominion, even though I hate Dominion, and then Fallen Kingdom. The first part of Fallen Kingdom, going back to the island, was fine. The whole Luigi's Mansion bullshit at the end, couldn't stand it. Honestly, couldn't stand it. So that's my final order. I feel like if you liked Jurassic Park 3, I feel like you're going to watch this and get glimpses that get you. You're like, ooh, that was a flicker there. I like that. But for the most part, it's still not Jurassic Park 3. It doesn't have that gritty realism of the dinosaurs that I want, but I saw a bit of intent to try and go that direction, but it still had the sort of Jurassic World layer mask of the dinosaur designs over the top of it. So that's my review. I think, yeah. If you like these types of videos about animal scientists' perspective on animals, movies, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.